We've had 3 movie versions of The Punisher so far. I'm sure at some point the Marvel machine will kick out a new version. But yeah, this is the second one, The Punisher, starring Thomas Jane, released in 2004. And I'm reviewing this film for my wonderful patron, Aaron White. It's been a while since I had kind of been to revisit this particular film, but when it first came out, I kind of really liked it, and then I watched it on DVD and I was a bit like, I'm not so sure. I think I watched it again after that and I thought, no, actually, it's actually quite a guilty pleasure. It's pretty decent. And then I saw it for a 4th time and I was like, no, that film's terrible. So coming back to it this time, I was like, I had no idea where I was going to sit with this. No idea where it was going to land, because this film has been up and down with me. So whatever grade I give it here, maybe take with a pinch of salt. But all I'll say is that watching it this time around is the most fun I've ever had with it. Now, I don't know if it's because of the current climate we live in, the way films are made these days, the way agendas are pushed, and the way that, quite frankly, things just get softened. Everything needs to be made for the 12A audience or the PG-13 audience if you're in America. And this one doesn't pander to that kind of audience. It goes all out. It does the action, it does the violence. I don't feel like I need that stuff for an action film. You know, I think movies like the Mission Impossible franchise do action perfectly fine without that kind of stuff. But they have the added bonus of a movie star like Tom Cruise, who's willing to throw himself out of a plane and things like that, you know? So yeah, they can do stuff that your average Joe kind of action movie can't. And this is an average Joe kind of action movie. It is kind of like in the wrong decade, really. I think when this first came out, this was a bit of a kind of an 80s action movie stuck in the early noughties, and so by this point it kind of just felt stale. But the passage of time is strange, isn't it? Because now I kind of crave movies like this due to the fact that we don't actually get that many of them. And so sitting down and watching this again, I just had a blast with it. It is unapologetic in its depiction of violence. It is very thin when it comes to messaging and, you know, like deep kind of philosophical views. This is literally a story of vengeance. It doesn't make any grand scale attempts at justifying that vengeance beyond saying, hey, you killed all my family, I'm now going to kill you and all your family. And that's it, really. You are either on board with Frank Castle's journey as he goes about his mission of vengeance, or you're not. As this is just a film and not real life, obviously I would never support this kind of violence in real life, but as it's just a film, I'm on board. I enjoy it. I get some kind of perverse enjoyment out of seeing these reprobate characters being taken down by someone who has seemingly all the justification in the world. Like, you know, if that was my family, someone did that to my family, I'd want to do what this guy does. So yeah, I'm along for the ride. Of the 3 movie versions of The Punisher, Thomas Jane is far and away my favourite of the 3. I think he's perfect casting for this role here. There's not much required for the role, but I think that he does it beautifully. That whatever you need for Frank Castle, that kind of stoic, grizzled, tortured, dark soldier of vengeance, he embodies that perfectly. You know, going from family man to that, I think he makes that change in a way that I buy perfectly fine for this kind of movie. I think the best performance in this movie actually goes to Will Patton. Will Patton's a really good actor. He's one of those character actors that kind of pops up in lots of movies, but he never takes center stage. So he was in like the recent Halloween trilogy, which, yeah, less said about that the better, although he was one of the better performers, shall we say, in that trilogy as well. Here, I think he is, yeah, he shines the brightest when it comes to performance. He's got a lot of subtle nuances in his performance that just really make the character stand out, that make the character something more than what I would say it is on the page. So he's this basically the right-hand man of the primary villain, played by John Travolta, Howard Saint. So yeah, this is his right-hand man, and he's got this secret that he's kind of hiding. You know, he's supposed to be the big, tough kind of mobster type, and this particular secret, if it got out, well, he doesn't want it getting out, and Castle uses that against him. When he kind of gets set up by Castle, and he's confronted by his boss, also kind of his friend, really. This friend who now feels betrayed. That scene that plays out there, I just think is really well acted by Patton. Maybe better performance there than a film like this deserves. I don't know. But yeah, certainly of the performances, he's the one for me that kind of shines. Travolta as well here is a pretty decent villain, I think. Travolta can be quite hit and miss for me, and sometimes I kind of go into a particular kind of film with him in, expecting him to deliver a certain kind of performance, and maybe that makes me be a little unfair to him. Whereas here, I think maybe because I knew I was going to review this, I paid a bit closer attention to some of the things he was doing, and I did like what Travolta was doing in this. There's certain ways that he humanises this man who, for all intents and purposes, is quite despicable. You know, this is someone who sells drugs, he's into prostitution and goodness knows what else. But ultimately, he does have a code of loyalty, and he does truly love his family. You know, he loves his kids. And there's one particular sequence when, you know, his son's been killed, and that's what kind of sparks his mission to destroy Frank Castle and his family to begin with. His son's dead, and he has this moment with him in the morgue that could kind of feel quite hokey. But here, I kind of like what Travolta's doing. Now, I know that Travolta did actually lose a child. I don't know if that was before he made this film or after he made this film, but certainly knowing that piece of information kind of makes that scene resonate a bit more, again, than perhaps it should. I don't know. I like what he's doing here, and I like the genuine anger that you feel coming through the character once Frank Castle's kind of plans start coming to fruition, and all these people that he's set up to look like they're betraying the Travolta character. I like that kind of anger that comes out of him, where, you know, where he truly feels like all these people who are close to him are suddenly betraying him. Yeah, Travolta plays that well. I also like that he doesn't get a big like kind of scrap with Castle in here. It's a bit more believable in the sense that if this guy went toe-to-toe with Castle in a fist fight, he'd get his ass handed to him. So he more depends on his minions, you know, people with guns and whatnot, and other fighters. So that to me is a bit more believable. For the most part, all the action sequences in this are really well shot. I know that director Jonathan Hensleigh was very much inspired here by the likes of Sergio Leone. You know, sticking on wide shots, and then like kind of going in for real close-ups on the face for the more emotional stuff. But by and large, when it comes to the action, staying quite wide, keeping the camera fairly still, not shaking it around like some crazy MTV music video. And I appreciate that. I always appreciate that in action, when you can actually see what's going on and you feel like the stunts and everything really kind of paying off because you're getting to see them. The script at times gets a bit hokey. There's certain lines of dialogue where you're just like, oh, I could have done with a bit more work, couldn't it? But again, it's not trying to be Shakespeare, and I think the film knows that, and that's why it has fun with a lot of things, a lot of elements in it. Two elements of which particularly are these two hitmen. So in the middle of the film, when Frank Castle's been doing a lot of his damage to the bad guys' kind of operations, they send a couple of assassins after him. One of them is this, what I like to call the evil Johnny Cash. He basically looks like Johnny Cash. He carries this guitar, and yeah, his name's Harry Heck, based on an actual comic book character as well, although from what I gather, a comic book character that didn't last very long in the comics. But nevertheless, still has its roots in the comic books. Something that I like about this film in general is that it is quite faithful to the comic book character of the Punisher. But yeah, Harry Heck, or Evil Johnny Cash, as I like to call him, I really like this guy. It could, again, could be a nothing character, someone you don't remember, but I think Hensley wisely kind of amps up the camp, amps up the larger-than-life character of these two hitmen that go after Castle. This being the first, he kind of meets Castle in this diner, whips out a guitar, sings him a song that he's written just for him, that basically tells him, look, game's on, I'm going to come after you, and then leaves before, you know, coming and trying to kill him. It's just, you don't need that, you know. You could just have this guy instantly come and try and kill him, and hey presto. But it wouldn't make this guy as memorable as this does. I love the fact that this guy respects the people he's going to kill enough to write a song for them, and make it a fair game, you know, by saying, look, I'm coming for you. Let's go. I kind of like that. It endears me to this guy, even though he is, yeah, a killer for hire. Second one is this Russian guy, again based on a character from the comic books. Something I appreciate, because these could have just been anybody, but the fact that they pluck actual characters from the comic books just makes it a bit more entertaining as a comic book nerd myself. But yeah, this big Russian guy goes after him, and it's just like an epic, ridiculous fight scene. Not quite They Live level, but along those lines. I always like ridiculous fight scenes that just go on and go from one room to another room to another room and down the stairs, and, you know, things that get dragged out. A fight that just gets dragged out, and yeah, it's one of them, and it's kind of like a centerpiece in the film where it's memorable. It's the thing I remembered most when I first saw it back in the cinemas, and every time it comes on, every time I watch it again, I just wait for this fight that Castle has with this Russian guy who's just a mountain of a man, absolute mountain of a man, and the two of them go at it, and it's just like, yeah. And they manage to find ways to inject comedy in there, like when the Russian slams down on this gun that Castle goes for and just basically bends it, and Castle, beaten half to death, is just looking at this gun like, oh crap. I watched it last night thinking it was probably going to come in as a middle of the road film, but I think I must have just really been in the right mood for it. As I say, this has been a 3-star movie for me before. It's been a 2-star movie for me before. Right now, after last night's viewing, it's a 4-star movie, just because of sheer enjoyment. Look, this ain't Citizen Kane of comic book movies or anything like that, but given what we've got in recent years and the fact that so much of the comic book movie world just has that samey kind of vibe about it, this felt refreshing. I urge you to revisit it. And maybe, just maybe, in the current climate of films, you might get something more out of this than you previously did. I know I did. So yeah, absolute blast. 4 out of 5 from me. But what about you? Have you seen the 2004 Thomas Jane The Punisher? And if so, what did you think about it? Leave your comments below. Let me and Aaron know what you thought of the film. And until next time, crackin'.